Level 1. The 10-year-olds. $40 10 years ago, when $40 was a desperate negotiation between gas for the car and groceries for the week. You're standing outside a hotel you've only ever seen in magazines, under a single flickering canopy light that hums with a sound like a trapped insect. The air is cold enough to make your teeth ache, a damp city chill that seeps through the thin fabric of your jacket. You have an invitation on your phone, a glowing QR code that feels like a forgery. You are supposed to be in there, at an event that promised networking, opportunity, a foot in a door you can't even see from here. The doorman sees you. He is a statue in a greatcoat, impassive until his eyes begin a slow, deliberate journey downwards. They drop to your feet. The shoes are clean, you made sure of it, scrubbing them with a toothbrush and dish soap until your knuckles were raw. But they are undeniably old. The gray fabric, once a crisp neutral, has surrendered to a permanent, weary duskiness. The sole, worn thin from 1,000 miles of walking to save on bus fare, is flat, tired. His eyes travel back up, pausing for a fraction of a second at your off-the-rack jacket before meeting yours. The politeness is there, but it's the wrong kind. It is the carefully curated patience one reserves for people who are lost, for tourists asking for directions to a landmark they are standing right in front of. The velvet rope, a deep, plush red, feels less like a barrier and more like a border. You are on the wrong side of it, an immigrant to a country that will not grant you a visa. He doesn't say you don't belong here. He doesn't have to. You finally get past him, your heart thumping with a small, hollow victory. You approach the front desk, a vast expanse of polished marble that reflects a distorted, elongated version of you. The question is technically correct. Can I help you? But the tone is wrong, pitched a little too high, a little too loud. It's the tone for a teenager who has wandered into the wrong building on a dare, a problem to be managed efficiently and quietly. Out of the corner of your eye, you see a security guard, broad-shouldered and bored, shift his weight. He doesn't move from his post, but his hand drifts down to rest near the radio on his belt. An old reflex, the body language of a man conditioned to anticipate trouble. No one says poor. No one says out of place. Your sneakers just screamed it into the silent, expensive air. You take a flight. Same shoes, a few years earlier, but the story is identical. The TSA line is a conveyor belt for humans. The agent, his face a mask of practice and deference, doesn't see your face. He sees tasks. He processes you. Shoes off, belt off, laptop out. You are component parts, dismantled and pushed through a machine in gray plastic bins. The man behind you, his loafers whispering of Italian leather and first-class lounges, is asked if he wants to keep his jacket on. A small courtesy. You are not asked anything. One of your frayed shoelaces snags on the edge of the bin, a tiny act of resistance. The agent lets out a sigh. It is not a sigh of anger or even frustration. It is the sound a complex machine makes when a single, worn-out cog jams the entire works. You are a jam in the machine. You stand on the cold, grimy airport floor in your socks, feeling the faint stickiness of 1,000 other travelers. Humiliation is a physical sensation, a cold patch spreading from the soles of your feet upwards. And a thought, sharp and unwelcome, begins to form in your mind. There are shoes that make you a suspect, a problem, a potential complication. There are shoes that make you invisible, a piece of background scenery not worth a second glance. You have somehow managed to find the pair that does both. Level 2. The upgrade. $120 hunted down at an outlet mall on a wet, miserable Sunday. The air in the store smelled of rubber and desperation. You stood there for 20 minutes, turning them over in your hands. You look at the image of the microwave in your apartment, the one with the broken handle you'd been prying open with a butter knife for 6 months, and you decided it could wait. You thought of the check engine light in your car, glowing with the steady, malevolent patience of a predator, and you ignored it. You bought a slightly better pair of sneakers. The lines are cleaner. The silhouette is current, something you've seen on people who walk with purpose. They are not leather, not yet, but the synthetic material is a convincing imitation. They are hope with stitching. You wear them to a client walkthrough on a construction site. The assistant project manager, a kid barely 25 with a sharp suit and an even sharper hunger in his eyes, gives them one look. Just one, a flick of the eye so fast you might have missed it if you weren't looking for it. And you see it. It is not the disdain you expected, it's something worse. Categorization. In that single glance, he files you away in a mental cabinet. Not the cabinet labeled poor, that's a simple and almost honest dismissal. He places you in the one labeled trying. Trying is a far more damning verdict. Trying means you know there's a game being played, but you're still on the sidelines trying to read the rulebook. Trying means you are aware of the uniform, but you got yours at a discount. The shoes are not a sign of arrival, they're a sign of aspiration. And you know it. The knowledge of their inadequacy, their almostness, transforms you. You become their anxious guardian. You start wiping them down with a damp cloth every night, a ritual to ward off the decay that signifies your true status. You change into them in the parking lot of the office, swapping them in for the old pair you now keep in your trunk. You begin to watch the pavement for puddles and scuff marks like they are landmines, your path becoming a zigzag of paranoid avoidance. You are the curator of a fragile symbol, a symbol you can't afford to let get old or dirty, because then it would just be another pair of shoes. These shoes aren't fooling anyone important. They're just broadcasting with painful clarity how much you want to. Level 3. The passport. The shoes are still the $120 pair, but time and wear have performed a strange alchemy. They're broken in now. The initial desperate newness has faded into a comfortable confidence. They have stories in their creases, but not stories of poverty. They look less like you're trying and more like you've been somewhere. You walk into a corporate lobby that smells of cedar, leather, and the quiet, invisible scent of money. You are 10 minutes early for a meeting that could change the trajectory of your year. You walk towards the reception desk, and your body involuntarily braces for the usual protocol, the suspicious glance, the doubtful, slightly patronizing, "Can I help you?" Your muscles tense, preparing to justify your existence. It doesn't happen. The woman at the desk, poised and professional, does the familiar ocular sweep. Her eyes travel down to your shoes, up to your worn but decent jacket, and back to your face. There is a pause, a single beat of silence where the calculation happens. Then she gives the smallest possible nod. It's not a smile. A smile would be charity. This is better. It is the simple, profound absence of suspicion. It is acknowledgement. A weight you were not consciously aware you were carrying, the leaden cloak of constant self-defense, simply evaporates from your shoulders. Your mouth, which had been preparing the opening arguments for why you should be here, relaxes. "The elevators are to your left," she says, her tone perfectly neutral. It is the most beautiful sound you've ever heard. In the meeting room, a long, intimidating space dominated by a dark wood table that reflects the sky, the magic continues. No one asks which company you're from, their voice laced with the implication that you've stumbled into the wrong gathering. No one double-checks if you're on the attendee list. Your shoes, now scuffed with the dignity of experience rather than the shame of neglect, have already answered. They said, "This person belongs in the vicinity of polished tables and chilled bottled water." A senior colleague, a man who has looked straight through you in the hallway for the past 6 months, now gestures towards the empty chair by the window, the one with the view. He says, "Take the good seat," a small offering of camaraderie. The tone of the entire room feels different, less heavy. The air is not thick with the need to prove yourself. When you speak, people wait for you to finish your sentences. They don't interrupt. They haven't suddenly learned that you are competent, that your ideas have merit. They have learned your silhouette. They have learned that your appearance now matches the minimum requirements for being heard. And once you feel that shift, that sudden, frictionless ease of existence, you can never, ever unfeel it. Level 4. The performance. You do it. You buy a pair of sneakers that cost more than your first car payment. The number on the credit card machine makes your hand tremble slightly. The purchase leaves a small, sharp pain in your chest, a phantom limb of financial security you just amputated. But this is not about comfort or practicality. This is for the performance. You are now a cast member in a play you've only ever watched from the cheap seats. You wear them to dinners where the food is an afterthought, an accessory to the real business of the evening. The point is not the meal. The point is the theater, the silent collective agreement that if you look like you belong, you do. You learn the choreography that accompanies a costume. You learn how to hold a wine glass by the stem, not the bowl. You learn how to stand at a networking event, one foot slightly behind the other, projecting a relaxed confidence you absolutely do not feel. You learn how to look like a man whose life has far fewer emergencies than it actually does. But the pressure is immense, a constant low-grade anxiety. The shoes must be perfect. A scuff mark is not a scuff mark, it is a public declaration of fraud, a crack in the facade. A tiny splash of spilled wine on the pristine white leather makes your stomach clench with a hot, sickening dread. You find yourself subtly angling your feet under tables, hiding them from view. You park your car at the far end of parking lots to avoid gravel that might kick up and mar the leather. The real work isn't in the spreadsheets anymore. It's not in the late nights at the office or the clever proposals. The work is in the draining, constant, obsessive maintenance of an illusion, the illusion of having arrived. The shoes become a second job, one that pays in fleeting moments of acceptance. You're not buying sneakers, you're buying a temporary ceasefire in a lifelong war with a world that is always, relentlessly judging your cover. You are paying a steep price for a costume that allows you to play the part of someone who doesn't have to worry about the price of things. The irony is so sharp it could cut glass. Level 5. The respect. The next pair is different. You've outgrown the need for logos and bright, attention-seeking colors. These are quiet. The design is minimalist, almost boring to the untrained eye. But to the right eye, they are a masterpiece. The leather is dense and supple, with a grain so fine it seems to drink the light. The stitching is perfect, invisible, the work of a master craftsman, not a machine. They are the shoes of someone who has stopped asking to be admired and is now simply, quietly in charge. They don't shout, they don't have to. You walk into a high-stakes negotiation, a merger, a buyout. The air is thin and cold with tension. The executive assistant, a woman who has acted as a gatekeeper for billionaires and titans, doesn't ask who you are or who you're here to see. She stands up the moment you walk through the door. She smiles, a genuine professional smile. "Good morning, may I get you an espresso while you wait?" It's a small thing, a trivial offer, but it isn't. It means the room, the entire ecosystem of this place, has already accepted you are worth options, worth the effort. The head of operations, a man who has run boardrooms for 30 years and can smell fear like a shark smells blood, enters the room. His eyes, as always, go to your shoes before they see your face. It's a habit, a quick assessment of his opponent. He gives a small, almost involuntary nod. It is not admiration, it's recognition, a shared language. It says, "I see you. You speak the same dialect of success that I do." A procurement lead, a woman who has spent a career reading the lies in expensive suits, sees the shoes and her shoulders, which were tight and high, visibly relax. Your shoes just served as a reference check. They vouched for you before you ever opened your mouth. And then you realize the deepest advantage of this level. It doesn't make you louder. It just reduces the colossal amount of proof you have to provide simply to be heard. A man in cheap sneakers has to earn the room's attention twice. First, by overcoming the bias against him, and then by the merit of his words. You now start at zero. The rules don't just stop working against you. In small, almost imperceptible ways, they start to bend in your favor. Level 6. The influence. At this level, the shoes don't just get you in the room and grant you a voice. They change the room's temperature before you even arrive. You walk into a trendy restaurant on a Friday night, the kind with a line out the door. A hostess, her face a mask of polite refusal, is in the middle of quoting a 40-minute wait to the couple in front of you. She turns to you, her eyes drop, and the mask dissolves. A flicker of panic, then deference. Suddenly, a table has just opened up. It's a miracle. A subcontractor who took 2 days to answer a critical email, his replies terse and unhelpful, now replies in 10 minutes. The phrase is always the same, a mantra of appeasement. Of course, we can absolutely make that happen. The world becomes full of people eager to solve your minor problems, to smooth your path. Not because they are kind, not because they like you, but because your appearance, the shoes, the watch, the cut of the coat, makes any friction, any inconvenience to you feel dangerous to them. Inconveniencing you would be a mistake, a strategic error with consequences they can't afford. A waiter who was lazy and forgetful with the next table becomes a model of precision and attentiveness at yours. Your name, landing in an email inbox, now carries a different weight. It is no longer a request, it is a summons.
You start to understand a dark, seductive truth. Status isn't about the power to get what you want through force or demand. It's about making others feel that not giving it to you would be a career-limiting move. The shoes are no longer a passport. They are a command signal, broadcasting an unspoken threat. And as the world bends to accommodate you, you find yourself bending with it, expecting the miracles, growing impatient with the friction that is the normal state of life for almost everyone else.
Level 7. The Ghost. You graduate from buying things. Buying is an activity for people who have to think about money. The sneakers are now commissioned. A person, not a salesperson, but an artisan, flies in to meet you. In a quiet hotel suite, they measure your feet with calipers and scanners. They ask about your preferred arch support, the climate you'll be in most often, the exact thickness of the tongue. There is no discussion of price. Weeks later, the shoes just arrive, in a custom monogrammed dust bag, in a handcrafted cedar box. The entire experience is designed to communicate one silent, terrifying thing. Your time is too valuable for the vulgarity of retail. You walk through a private air terminal. The floors are polished concrete. The walls are adorned with minimalist art that is worth more than the building. A silent staff member carries your single bag 10 feet behind you. No one makes eye contact for more than a second. It is a sign of respect. It is also a form of erasure. No one will remember your face. They will only remember that a person of a certain caliber, an entity, has passed through. You step into a penthouse elevator. The walls are mirrored on all four sides. The reflection shows you the shoes first, perfect and understated. Then the posture they create. Then the watch that complements them. You are an outline of a life so expensive it can be assumed, a collection of signifiers. People at this level are polite in a way that makes intimacy impossible. They want access. They want proximity to the power and capital that your shoes represent. They do not want you. And that hits you, all at once, with the cold, sterile shock of the private terminal. You are back at the airport from level 1, standing on the floor in your socks, invisible. But this is worse. At the bottom, your invisibility was because you were a problem or an object. At the top, your invisibility is because you are a brand. In both places, the room doesn't see a person, it sees a category. The shoes didn't make you visible. They got so loud they ate you. You look down at your own feet. The sneakers are perfect, flawless. They have done everything they were supposed to do, opened every door, silenced every doubter, changed every conversation before it began. But they have not once, made anyone see the man wearing them. They have only made you effortlessly readable in the cold, transactional dialect of status. Across the street, through the tinted glass of your silent limousine, you see a younger version of yourself standing in front of a restaurant. His shoes are new, clean in that wrong, desperate way. He keeps checking the door, then his phone, his body tense with a mixture of hope and fear. He doesn't know yet. He doesn't know the room is about to decide who he is before he speaks a single word. He doesn't know that one day he will own shoes so expensive they will make strangers kinder and his own reflection feel like a stranger. He thinks that one day, if he just gets the right things, they will finally see him. He doesn't know. The world was never going to admire him. It was only ever going to admire his permission slip. The shoes changed at every level, a constant upgrade of material and craftsmanship. The man inside them never did, but the world only ever looked at the leather.